we have a lot of teenage girls here tonight. So I'm going to tell you to watch out. As you will find out, Charlie was a dog. He would be canceled today. So if any of you start to get nervous, I'm just talking about him, okay? Anyway, thank you for coming. Charlie Chaplin is really, whoops, let's just pull this up here, I'm sorry. Well, maybe now. Well, that's okay. I can do that.
Well, in this country, and leaving this world,
Yeah, okay.
I know.
and this plant, they cut plants, that's fine. Your plants
Christy did it. She said, "Mom,
Yeah,
I did
I didn't
it."
get it.
It's not- it's not
Right,
like
that's
the
right.
checks, it's the cash. That's my feeling, but she did it all.
Yes. Thank you. You are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. Thank you, Charlie. Charlie was the first international movie star. Of course, he was born in
England.
England, yes, in London. I'm going to tell you a little bit about South London. Charlie was here. Let's just see if I can do this now. Look at me. I'm technologically advanced. This is Charlie's mother, Hannah Hill Chaplin. She was the daughter of a shoemaker. Her mother was put in an insane asylum, as it was called at the time. Hannah will experience the same fate. She was married to Charles Sr., and he was the son of a butcher. Both were music hall entertainers. English music hall entertainers are equivalent of vaudeville. So if you don't know about English music halls, but you know vaudeville, that's what they were. They were performers on the stage. Chaplin Sr. was the more well-known. Charlie is born April 16th of 1889. And let's pull that slide up. On East Lane in South London. Technically it's East Street, but the English call a street a lane if they have an open-air market on it. And from what I have read, they still have an open-air market there on Sundays. Now you can see from that crowd there, and the buildings, that really looks like an exclusive place to live, right? That is, let me tell you very, very quickly about South London. South London is separated from the rest of London by the Thames River. It's kind of a city unto itself. Charlie's born in Victorian England, April 16, 1889. Remember that day and year because it comes into someone that we will compare him to. Most of the shops that are around are small, generally dirty, You would have tanneries and dressmaking shops, maybe some hat manufacturers. Let's talk about the smells. This is all what Charlie grew up with. You would get what wafted through the air was dog poo. The reason for that was that dog poo was used in tanning leather. Yes, how about it? Not today, but back then, the tanneries would combine dog poo, so they would collect it up and mix it in with water and soak the leather skins in it, and it became soft and pliable. So imagine that smell going through the air. There are a lot of tanneries there. You would also get smells of vinegar from the pickle factories. There were slaughterhouses right there on the street. If anyone's ever driven by a slaughterhouse 4 or 5 miles away, you can smell it 4 or 5 miles away. Imagine living right next door to one, like Charlie and his mother did at one point. Right in between a pickle factory and a slaughterhouse. Some of the other smells that you would get would be horse manure, these large, unwashed crowds of English people wearing their same stinky clothes day after day after day. This is not the Victorian London of 221B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes, and all the fancy English people in carriages. These are the working class people of England, the lower working class. Now, you would think with all these great smells that are around slaughterhouses and vinegar and all kinds of fertilizer, shall we say, you would think maybe a good rain would wash that away, right? And you want to know why? You can see in that picture, see in the upper left-hand corner there, the chimney caps. What did most people use, except for the ultra-rich in Victorian England, what did they use for heat? Coal. No, they used the dung for the leather, so that's why your purses smell so nice. They use coal. Now, everyone is using coal. Factories are using coal, the homes, the apartments, these shabby little apartments with maybe a window, maybe not, would use coal, and they burn the coal and it goes up into the air. Well, when it rains, it does occasionally in England, about 6 times a day, the coal dust mixes with the rain, and you now get black, oily, greasy splotches in your hair and on your skin. Isn't that nice? That doesn't clean anything up. That's the England that Charles Chaplin grew up in. His childhood is made up of poverty and deprivation. There's another shot of East Lane. Charlie was born, I said, in 1889. His parents were born for 4 years, married for 4 years before Charlie was born. And, whoop, I hit the wrong page. I'll get this down. And they were married for 4 years. Charlie comes along. His father is quite the musical entertainer. And after 2 years of baby Charlie in the house, Charles Sr. leaves. Now, Hannah had an illegitimate child before Charlie. Charlie has a half-brother, Sid Chaplin. You might have heard of him. You'll see a few pictures of Sid in this presentation. And when Charles Sr. leaves, Hannah with Sid, even though he was the legal guardian of Sid, though not his child, and Charlie, who was his child, he does not give them any support at all. He basically drinks all their support money. Hannah has to get by with some nursing, some sewing, and she also walked the streets from time to time to make some money. And Charlie acknowledged that in his later years. So Hannah's having a very difficult time trying to make ends meet. Twice before the age of 9, there's Charlie in the middle. He's sent to a workhouse. He calls it a forlorn existence. Charlie is in and out of workhouses. Let me show you one of the pleasant schools that he went to. Doesn't that look warm and inviting? Not at all like St. Patrick's across the street. And these were schools for the poor. Yes, like Dickens wrote about workhouses, and this is Charlie experiences this. So does Sid. They are both sent to these schools for the poor and workhouses. And Hannah is eventually confined, off and on, to a state-of-the-art mental asylum called Cane Hill. And she is sent there eventually because she has contracted a venereal disease. And combine that with acute malnutrition, and she just goes to pot. Before she does so, after Charles Sr. leaves, she has another illegitimate son. So she has three. Two are illegitimate, by the name of George Wheeler Dryden, fathered by a famous English music hall performer. And when the baby is 6 months old, he's taken away. And Charlie won't see him again until his half-brother is 30 years old. So Charlie is living on the streets while his mother is living in this mental asylum. Let me show you some, a couple more pictures. There we go. Now that really looks like a place that's going to make you better. She's confined at times to a padded room. She's in, she's out. When she is in the mental asylum, Charlie is living on the streets. At one point, he and Sid are sent to live with his father. Now remember the pictures that I just showed you of the fabulous neighborhood that was East Lane there in South London? Well, Charlie's father doesn't even know his son now. He hasn't seen his son basically for 6 or 7 years, 8 years, when Charlie and Sid are sent to live with him because Mom is in the mental asylum. And Charles Sr.'s girlfriend, they're both drinking very heavily, wants no part of the kids. Sid is on the street. Charlie is stuck with a woman that doesn't want him there. And his mother, as I said, is in and out of mental asylums. Charlie sees his father for the last time in 1901, when he is 12 years old, on New Year's Eve, 1900, in the Three Stags pub. Today it's known as the Stag Pub. I don't know what happened to the other two stags, but it is still in existence. In that lower right-hand corner, they have a Chaplin corner down there. So they acknowledge that Charlie visited this. Charles Sr. spent a lot of time there drinking away his money. And Sr. died at the age of 37 of cirrhosis of the liver. Charlie now is basically on his own. His mother, again, is in and out of asylums. She wanted Charlie to go to school, and he did until the age of 13. So that makes what, about 7th grade, 6th or 7th grade. By the time he's 14, he's done with education. Think what he accomplished with only a 6th grade education. One of the other great silent clowns, too, Buster Keaton, had a total of 1 day of public school. So these were amazing men. Charlie, when he did get some money, he and Sid took her out of the mental asylum, put her in her own apartment. When he became famous here in America, he brought her to the States, bought her a small home, and she required round-the-clock care. But Charlie always took care of his mom. Now, Charlie gets, when he's 5 years old, he gets his first taste of show business when his mother is performing and her voice cracks. And if you did not perform well in an English music hall, the crowds gave you a very hard time. They were cheering her, throwing things at her, and Charlie's 5 years old. He goes out on the stage, he sings some songs, does some imitations, does a couple of dances. The people cheer him, they throw money at him. Charlie stops to pick up the money. You don't do that, you pick up the money at the end, which led to more laughter. But now he's not on stage again, until he's about 9, and then he realizes that his mother was telling him he had some kind of talent. Well, I guess Mom was right about that. Charlie ends up in a group. Let's get a picture up here. There he is, third from the left. The 8 Lancashire Lads. It's a clog dancing troupe. And his father had some connections, being in the English music hall. Charlie auditioned, and Charlie is dancing with these other boys. We got another picture of him a little bit later in his career with them. There is Charlie there. And it's successful. He's sending half a crown a week home to Mom. He eats regularly. He has a fairly clean bed to sleep in. But he doesn't want to be a dancer. Charlie wants to entertain people. Even at this age, he wanted people to laugh at him. When the second tour ends, Charlie's back out on the streets, living rough. Sometimes dancing to a street musician for a few coppers that people would throw in. Sometimes he's stealing food to survive. Well, Charlie gets a job in 1906, 1903, in the play Sherlock Holmes. He had done a play earlier for 2 weeks, and it closed, but he got very good notices. The producer remembered him and decides to put Charlie in Sherlock Holmes. He does 3 tours around England over almost 3 years. And he said it's like tidings from heaven. He's eating regularly, he's performing, he's thinking about becoming a dramatic actor. And he even, in between the tours, he appears with this man right here, William Gillette. That name, anyone here a Sherlock Holmes fan? That's the first man to portray Sherlock Holmes on the stage. And Charlie did a short version of the play with him. He got very good notices. But after the 3rd tour, he's kind of tired of it, and the 3rd tour ends, and now Charlie is back to being just a street kid. He's doing various jobs, selling newspapers, stealing food. His brother Sid, by this time, now remember his father is dead, his mother is locked away in a padded room in Cane Hill, and Charlie is living rough on the streets. Sid gets off one of his ships that he was working on in 1906. Charlie goes to see him. Sid doesn't recognize him. He's so shabby, he's so dirty, his hair is long and greasy, he doesn't even recognize his own brother. Well, he takes Charlie and he cleans him up. And in 1906, Sid goes to work for Fred Carno. Has anyone here ever heard that name before? Have you heard of the Schuberts on Broadway?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you did a play for the Schuberts or one of those families, then you're someone that is, then you have talent. You're playing with the A team. If you were in English musicals and you were working for Fred Carno, you're on the A team. He was known all around the country for putting on great shows. He would direct some of them in comedy, and Sid went to work for Fred Carno in 1906. By 1908, Sid is one of the top comics for Fred Carno. Now Sid wants to get his brother some work. So he has Charlie try out or audition for Fred Carno. And Carno takes one look at this kid and says, this puny, sullen, kind of bashful, quiet kid, he's not going to do anything on the stage. But since he likes Sid, he gives Charlie a chance. Well, Charlie comes out, and from his first entrance, he has the audience roaring. By the time he comes out for the 3rd, 4th, 5th time, the audience is just clapping and hooting and hollering because this new kid is out on the stage. Wow. He's a success. Fred Carno signs him to a contract, and Charlie realizes, I will never be out of work again. He eventually now, so he signs the contract in 1908. By 1910, he's the lead comedian. He's making the equivalent of $75 a week. Pretty nice money, right? 1908, 1909, 1910. Although that was cheap to be a headliner in the music halls. Fred Carno spent the money on the productions, but not on payroll. But you were working for Carno because it was prestigious. So you had a good name. Charlie develops into a top-notch comedian that everyone comes to see. As a matter of fact, he is so good that by 1910, Fred Carno decides to make some money here in the States, and he sends Charlie out to be with a touring company that will tour the United States. You can see Charlie already on the lower left. That's some of the ads. Chaplin's name is right there. Those, and on the right, those are some of the ads and displays and pictures from the Carnival Company that they came across on basically a cattle boat in 1910. That, of course, is Charlie in the center. Charlie always had to be in the center. Charlie's ego might have fit in this room if everyone left. Charlie always had to be number one, but he was a comedian with these guys. A lot of the other comics and actors didn't like him because Charlie was always had to be the center of attention. They said he was always on. And that's Charlie in there with the life preserver around him. Anyone recognize, let's see. This fellow right here. Does he look at all familiar to anyone? Excuse me?
I said David Niven.
No. Completely opposite end of show business. He was teamed with a rather rotund individual.
Oh, yeah.
Stan Laurel.
Stan Laurel.
That is Stan Laurel toured with Chaplin in 1910 and then again in 1912 when they come to America. And he's actually Charlie's understudy. So he was good friends with Charlie. Once Charlie became famous, I don't know you anymore, Stan. Anyway, as I said, Charlie is making $75 a week when he comes back on the second tour. When they were done with the first tour, he said, I had a feeling of sinking back into commonplaceness because no one's laughing and clapping for him on the stage. Well, on the second tour, a few months into the second tour in 1912, Charlie is spotted by someone in the New York Motion Picture Company. And the New York Motion Picture Company had an arm that was out in California, run by that man right there, Matt Sennett. Yep, Keystone Cops. Jesse Conklin, Ben Turpin, Fatty Arbuckle, started Mabel Norman. He and Hal Roach were the two guys that vied for to be the, although Matt got the name King of Comedy. So the New York Motion Picture Company signs Charlie. They double his Carno salary. He's making $150 a week, but after 3 months he's going to get raised to $175. Wow. Charlie at first doesn't want to do films, but he says, you know what, it would be a different kind of life, something that I can try. He saw Sennett's films on the stage, on the screen, and he said it was a melange of rough and rumble. But Charlie said, I can do this. I'm making more money, and it's a different life. So let's see how it works. So he signed in December of 1912, and he goes out to California. Sennett takes one look at him and says, what am I going to do with this kid? He's pale, he's shy, not for long, Mac, and he doesn't put him in any films right away. But Charlie already is very curious about films. Like Stan Laurel, when Stan is first making silent films, Charlie wants to know how the camera works. So he's watching how guys are directing, he's seeing what they're using with the diffusers for lighting and how they're setting up shots. Charlie's already looking to see how films are made, even though they're paying him $150 a week to basically sit around. Well, in January, you're not going to sit around too long with Mac Sennett, not if he's paying him. Charlie makes his first film, released in January of 1913. And it's called Making a Living. And that's Charlie on the left. Doesn't look too much like our guy, does it? He doesn't have his costume yet. Well, Charlie hates this film throughout his whole career. He didn't like it at all. He's about to appear on film for the second time, and he comes up with a character. And I'm going to quote Charlie here. I wanted everything to be a contradiction. The pants baggy, the coat tight, the hat small, and the shoes large. I added a small mustache, which I reasoned would add age and not hide my expressions. I had no idea of the character. But the moment that I was dressed in the clothes and the makeup, I began to be the person that he was. I began to know him, and by the time I walked out on the stage, he was fully there. What was the character that Charlie became?
Little Tramp.
That's right. Very good. Oh, come on in.
Little Tramp.
That role is topsy-turvy. Yes, he becomes the tramp character. And this is his first film appearance, Mabel's Strange Predicament. If any of you are familiar with Mack Sennett films, besides the Keystone Cops, you'll notice, Fatty's Day in the Park, Mabel's Strange Predicament. The reason why they did this is because Sennett was one of the last producer-directors to put the stars' names in the credits. So he had to put the star's name in the title. So if you were paying your nickel to go in and see the film, you want to know what you're seeing, and you're seeing Mabel Normand. This is the first film that Charlie makes as the character, and it catches on. Technically, he made another film, Kid Auto Races at Venice, that he's a small part. It's shown 2 days earlier, but this is really the first film and role where the tramp character is born. Charlie now will continue to basically be that character from this point on. By the time he makes the 11th film there at Sennett, Mabel at the wheel, got to put Mabel's name in there, Mabel Normand, Charlie is already making suggestions to the directors. Why don't you do this? Why don't we do this situation? Set up the camera here. And the directors are like, shut up, kid, we don't have time. Who's this snotty little Englishman at 24 years old already telling us how to make films? Well, Mabel Normand is directing this picture. She was a big star. She was probably at this time, lead comedian in the United States. And he's having a fight with her. He basically tells her, why should I listen to you? And he storms off. Mabel Normand was Mack Sennett's girlfriend. Probably not a good thing to do, right? You don't want to tick off the boss's girlfriend. They never married. That's a whole nother story. Not for tonight. But anyway, Mack was always in love with Mabel. Mabel wants him fired. Mack considers the firing Charlie until the heads of New York, the New York corporate office, wire Mack and say, we want more tramp films. The exhibitors want this guy. So Mack Sennett doesn't fire him. Charlie now goes to Mack Sennett and says, I want to direct. And I will pay you $1,500 if the film is not a success. The guy is only making films for a couple of months, because they're making about a film a week here. You're making one reelers, which are about 10 minutes, sometimes two reelers, which are approximately 20 minutes, like the Three Stooges shorts, those are two reelers. And he's already wanting to direct. Well, Mack Sennett lets him direct. And he never gets to collect the $1,500 that Charlie offers him if the film is a bomb, because the film is not a bomb. It's a success. This is the first film that Charlie Chaplin ever directs, of course starring himself. And after this, it works out so well. Charlie is basically directing all the films that he's in for the rest of his Sennett career. He makes 35 films in all. 34 are available on DVD. Many of them are on YouTube. Charlie goes on to make this film towards the end of his contract, his first year with Sennett, Tilly's Punctured Romance. Does anyone recognize that rather svelte woman that Charlie's dancing with?
Yeah.
Well, it looks like a man, but it was a woman that knew that she was not pretty. That's Marie Tressler.
Yeah.
Right? Remember that name? Made a lot of movies with Wallace Beery in the 30s. One of the most beloved actresses of early Hollywood. And Charlie plays a secondary role in this. He's a suitor to Tilly there. And this is a very important film. This is the first feature-length comedy ever made.
Wow.
And Charlie has a big role in it. Well, now Charlie is starting to realize what his popularity is. So now his contract is up in December of 1913, and he goes to Mack Sennett and he says, "I want $1,000 a week," up from now 175. And Mack Sennett becomes Italian and goes, biggest mistake he ever made. Charlie is not, he's turned down for the $1,000 a week, and Mack Sennett admitted that he regretted that for the rest of his life. Charlie is offered money by the S&A, E-S-S-A-N-A-Y film company, to make shorts for them. You want to guess what Charlie's salary was for that? Close to $1,000. $1,250 a week with a $10,000 signing bonus.
Wow.
Do you know what the average salary was of people in 1914, 1915? Guess. An average yearly salary. Who said $700? You're off by $13.
Wow.
But very good. $687 is the average salary for a year. Charlie's making $1,250 a week. Wow. Now, when he goes to S&A, and it's all about business. He did like working for Mack Sennett. But as Charlie said, business is business. He goes to S&A and he hires some stock players. Bud Jamison, anyone here Three Stooges fans? You will see Bud Jamison in a lot of Three Stooges shorts up to 1944 until he died. Leo White, another famous secondary comedian. Billy Armstrong, and Charlie adds this lady right here. Look how pretty she is, Edna Purviance. He sees her in a cafe, and he hires her because she is so beautiful. She goes on to make 35 films with Charlie, more than any other of his leading ladies, and I will tell you why those happened. And not only is she starring with Charlie on the screen, but she's starring with Charlie off the screen. They're having a hot and heavy romance, yes.
What was the name?
Edna Purviance. And she is now with Charlie through S&A and then his subsequent moves. Charlie's character is rough. He's kind of a brute at times in the Sennett fashion, and he gradually is changing the character, giving him, as he said, a bit of a Perot kind of characterization, softening him, making him likable. This film is available, I believe, on YouTube. The Tramp, this was a big turning point. Charlie's character becomes nice. Also in the S&A filming period, which Charlie described as one of the most exciting times of his life, Charlie's taking more time to make films. When he was at Sennett, he's making about a film a week. One reel is, some turn out to be 2 reels, a little longer. Here he's making 2 reelers for S&A. And he's taking time. He's developing stories. In this film here, The Bank, this is a historic film. It's a solid Chaplin comedy. This is the first comedy to have an unhappy ending. No one had done that in comedy before. But Charlie did it, and basically what happens is he falls asleep. He's the janitor. He falls asleep and he dreams that he wins Edna's heart and beats the bank robbers and saves the money, and he wakes up kissing the mop and realizes that it was all a dream. Well, these films are so popular that Charlie has his name in a disease. I believe it was the Motion Picture Weekly. They did an article and they said the country was experiencing Chaplinitis because Charlie is known and seen everywhere. They are writing songs about him. There's some sheet music up the top too, right? Pictures, toys, dolls, as you can see by the left. He's in comic strips. Everything is Charlie Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin. He is, in 1915, he's an international star. Just 7 years ago, he was basically looking for work with Fred Karno, scrounging, stealing money, stealing food just to survive. And now, he's world famous. Well, the contract runs up with S&A. It's time to sign again. And he signs with the Mutual Film Company. Anyone want to guess what he got for salary now in 1915? A weekly salary? Oh, take a guess, come on.
1,500.
1,500? What a piker you are.
3,000.
Did I hear 3,000?
3,000.
Do I hear 4? Do I hear 5? Do I hear 5,000? Do I have 5,000? That's not enough. Do I hear 6? Anyway, I'll save it the time. $10,000 a week. Oh, marron to me, and I'm not even Italian, right? $10,000 a week with a signing bonus of $150,000.
Wow.
1915. Holy cow! He's one of the richest salaried people in the world.
Did he save it?
Making six. Oh, did Charlie save it? Oh, yes, he saved it. Yes, yes, he did. Charlie could squeeze a nickel until the buffalo screamed. Yes, he was generous with his friends. He would take care of his friends. And when he ran his own studios, when they weren't making films, he kept the production crews all on salary. But Charlie was very tight with money in many respects because he came from not having money. He goes on now with the Mutual Films to make a lot of films that you're probably more familiar with the short films. Here he is with the Fall Walker, that's Eric Campbell, who was also from the Fred Karno troupe. He takes on Albert Austin, another actor from the Fred Karno troupe, because they know how they work together. Charlie, with this, when he signs with Mutual, he takes 1 month to make each film for the first half of the contract. By the time he's in the second half of the contract, in the last 6-7 months, he only produces 4 films. Because he's taking time to develop stories, to develop characterization. These are films that you may be familiar with. If you are not, I would advise you to get some DVDs or go on YouTube and you can watch them for free. These 4 films here are some of the finest work, not just little Larry Wolff is saying it, but Chaplin critics said this is some of the finest work that he ever did. Easy Street, The Immigrant, The Adventurer, and The Cure. These films are just phenomenal. Charlie is working at Mutual. They gave him a studio to work at, and now when his contract is up, Charlie wants to build his own studio. So he does. It's still standing today, located on Sunset Boulevard. That's the Chaplin Studios they're seeing today. Today, it's part of Mickey Mouse's realm. Disney has bought over Chaplin's old studio. Chaplin leaves the Mutual contract now, and he is now, how much do you think? Now we'll just jump to a year. He's approached by Universal and Fox and First National, and he ends up signing with First National for, does anyone want to guess what he made for the year? $1 million.
In those days.
In those days, when the average man was making $700 a week, a year, Charlie is making $1 million. Now he makes a film, A Dog's Life, for First National. He goes, and when he signed with First National, Sidney, his half brother that is representing him business-wise, said, Charlie must be allowed all the money and all the time necessary to complete his films. It is quality, not quantity, that we are after. Well, Charlie was an artist, and he makes A Dog's Life for First National, and then what was going on in 1917?
Great Depression.
Thank you. The Great War, the war to end all wars. If it was the war to end all wars, why did they call it World War I? Anyway, never mind.
We'll get to that.
Yes, that's right. At the time, it was the Great War. But when you ask kids that, they go, I don't know why they call it World War I. Anyway, here he is appearing on Wall Street. Look at that crowd.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, my.
Look at that crowd. All to see Charles Chaplin in person. He makes a short film that he donates to the war effort for the bond drive, called The Bond, Savings Bonds, and that is his half-brother, Sid Chaplin, playing Kaiser Wilhelm. That Charlie's about to bop with a Liberty Bond hammer. First National isn't particularly happy with Charlie, because Charlie wants some more money. They paid you $1 million. Get off the wall. They have to be very careful. They can't be too loud about the war bond tour, because that would be unpatriotic, but we're paying you $1 million. How about making some movies for us? Charlie is a little nervous now. He is going to, I'll show you a picture in just a minute. He hears that First National may combine with famous players. Lasky, who the guy that ran that was a real crumb. Charlie didn't want a part of that, so he forms a movie company with 3 other Hollywood heavyweights. United Artists. It's formed there, you can see that right, with Mary Pickford, D.W. Griffith, Charlie, and Mary's husband, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. And they form United Artists so that they can fund, produce, and release their own films without studio interference. Charlie doesn't like working for First National so much, he offers to buy out the contract, and they go, oh, no, you don't. No, you're working for us, make some more films. So Charlie makes, after the formation of UA, he makes 2 more short films, which are the last short films that he will ever make. And he now is on his own. Now he's free, he has his own studio, he's got tons of money in the bank, and he is now going to make his own pictures. So does anyone know the name of the first picture that Charlie made on his own? No, it wasn't Birth of a Nation. That's a little too heavy, but you're kind of in a good genre. Charlie didn't make a comedy. Charlie decides to make a serious film, probably one that you haven't heard of. This one right here. Well, excuse me, I jumped a bit. I jumped a bit. I'll show you the film in a second. Oh, the slide is gone. Well then I can tell you what it was. While Charlie is forming United Artists, he employs this young girl right here, Mildred Harris. Charlie gets pregnant. Oh boy is right. Charlie is in his 30s. You want to guess how old Mildred is?
18.
17. 17 years old. Uh-oh. He goes off. They have a secret wedding. It turns out the pregnancy was a false alarm. She ends up getting pregnant, giving birth to Norman Spencer Chaplin, who only lives for three days. Charlie is not happy. He's lost a baby, and he ends up divorcing Mildred in 1920. Now he goes on, and I'm sorry, I jumped there. He is still working for First National, and he makes this film. This is his first feature-length comedy film. And I'm sorry, he's still working the kid with Jackie Coogan. Does anyone know who Jackie Coogan grew up to be? Uncle Fester, yes, from the Attitude. That's right, guys. Yes, Uncle Fester. Fester, old boy. Yes, I was Jackie Coogan. At this point, he's 4 years old. And he talks, and Charlie loves him to death, but he said when he smelled the spirit gum and saw the mustache go on Charlie's face, he knew it was time to go to work. Well, this film is just over an hour long. It's an amazing film. Amazing. If you can get it on DVD or watch it on YouTube, this is, as I said, Charlie's first feature-length comedy that he makes. And when he combines comedy with pathos and drama. This scene right here, when they take the kid away from the tramp is left to, he finds an abandoned infant and he raises him as his own, and the child authorities come and try to take the kid away from the tramp. If you don't get a tear in your heart at this scene where Jackie Coogan is pleading, please, please don't take me away, and the guy just pushes him back in the truck, you know, and yet the tramp rescues him, and it has a happy ending. I won't ruin it for you, but it does have a happy ending. Watch this film. Those scenes are amazingly powerful today, 100 years later. Charlie now, that was, of course, he had just lost his own child. Now he makes 2 more films, and he's done with First National. The first film that he's going to make on his own under United Arts is not a comedy, but a drama. Starring Erna Proviance, and Proviance, you have probably not heard of this film for good reason. It's a silent film drama. He made it for Edna to have a starring role. It was a box office disappointment. Charlie writes it, he directs it, he does not appear in it except in a cameo with his back to the camera for about 6 seconds, carrying in a big steamer truck. When people see Charlie Chaplin's name on a poster or something, they don't want to see a drama, drawing room drama. They want to see a comedy. So now Charlie decides, when this film is done, I have to make, my next film has to be the greatest, an epic. Anyone want to tell me what the next film is that he makes? It's released in 1925.
Klondike?
What?
Klondike?
Yeah, sure, in the ballpark. And here we go. The Gold Rush, which takes place in the Klondike. This film cost Charlie $1 million to make in 1925. 600 extras, shooting on location in the Truckee Mountains with snowstorms and accidents. He has to bring everyone back to the studio, state of the art at the time in 1920, special effects. And this is a very powerful film. Charlie ends up with an unhappy ending, but it has 2 of the greatest, most memorable scenes that Charlie ever put on film. Right? And when he eats the shoe with Max Swain because they're starving. Anyone know what that shoe was made out of?
Chocolate.
No. Yes, but you have to say it the right ways. Licorice. Yes, licorice. Yes, it was made of licorice, and Charlie shot, seeing it, until he was nauseous from eating a black licorice shoe. The other very famous scene, and this is an excellent film all around, the dance of the dinner rolls, which Charlie had done at a party, fooling around, and I can put that in the film. And he does. This film, now it cost him $1 million to make. His profit in 1925 is $5 million. Whoa is right. This guy, just everything he touches except for the drama turns to gold. This is a fantastic film. It was supposed to have this young girl in it. Hang on. And this young girl right here, Lita Gray, is supposed to be Charlie's leading lady in the film. Anyone want to guess what happens? She gets pregnant. Wow. Are we starting to see a pattern here?
He's a pervert.
Now, yes. Now, Mildred was 17. So Charlie learned his lesson. How old do you think Lita Gray is?
18.
16. No. He could have been thrown in jail.
Today.
He gets, well, today he can't, today he wouldn't even make it to jail. They put him on a stick and burn him. But back then he realized that he could be charged with statutory rape. They go to Mexico, they have a secret marriage, they come back. She is pregnant, she gives Charlie 2 sons. Here we go, right there. Charles Jr. and Sidney Earl Chaplin, 1925 and 1926. It's not a happy marriage. Charlie does not like to be tied down. He is quite the womanizer. He said in his later years, as we discussed earlier, that he that he got very friendly, we'll put it that way, with 2,000 women. That's what he said. If true, that's even more than Gary Cooper. Yes, Gary Cooper. Oh, Gary Cooper. The reason why they end up getting divorced, even though it's not a nice marriage, is because when Charlie makes his next film, Lita Chaplin, her best friend, is starring in the movie, and guess what Charlie's doing with her? Yeah, well, he didn't get her pregnant, but yes, they're doing the horizontal mama. Yes. Can anyone tell me what the name of the next film is that Charlie makes? Probably the one feature silent film that you're probably not familiar with. It's not that well known, but anyone want to guess? It involves the big top? The circus. This is an excellent film, the least known of all of Charlie's silent features. Again, watch this film. This is an amazing film. At the first Academy Awards ceremony in 1928, which Wings won the Best Picture, right? Charlie was given a special Oscar for producing, writing, directing, and acting in the circus. This is a laugh out loud funny film, and in it Charlie got the idea for this film by having the tramp walk across a tightrope and being harassed by a bunch of monkeys, and he based the film around that. The tramp becomes the inadvertent, accidental star of the circus. Of course, he doesn't last. Doesn't get the girl, but this is really a very funny film. Again, they're available. I don't have any interest in it. I have no stock in the Chaplin estate. But if you would get a copy of this, I would advise you to. Very entertaining film. Released in 1928, right? What famous film came out in 1927 that ruined silence forever? You don't want to see me kneel and sing, do you? You ain't heard nothing yet. The jazz singer. Thank you very much. Without Jolson. That's right. Silent films already had competition as far back as 1922. Weber and Fields, the vaudeville comedy team, Eddie Cantor, all made talkie short films as far back as 1922. But the studios weren't wired for it. There wasn't a call for it. People looked at it as kind of a joke. It's a short film. It's a comedy. It's not important. Once Jolson, who was only supposed to sing, said those words, "You ain't heard nothing yet," people wanted to hear their stars talk. All of a sudden, sound was going to become acceptable for feature films. What did Charlie think about sound? Do you think he liked it?
No.
Very good. You've heard this lecture before. I was determined to continue making silent films. I was a pantomimist, and in that medium I was unique, and without false modesty, a master. No one can ever accuse Charlie of modesty. Charlie was indeed, probably, and I love Harold Lloyd, and Buster Keaton to me is a god as far as silent film comedy goes. But Charlie was the complete picture. Charlie found out that he would eventually write the themes for his silent feature films. There's a whole set out. Some of the music you heard when you came in comes from this next film that I'm about to tell you about. Sound is out there now. Charlie feels if the tramp talks, he's going to lose his international appeal. Silent film is an international language. You could show a silent Hollywood film in Germany, in China, in Brazil, and everyone's going to get it. You could translate the title cards, but everyone gets it. Once they talked, no, film is no longer international. Well, what's the next film that Charlie makes? Does anyone want to guess? Is anyone a Chaplin fan here?
Great Dictator?
No, not yet.
Later.
Yeah, a little later. It is this film right here. City Lights, with Virginia Cherrill, who was not a very accomplished actress. Charlie was sorry that he picked her out.
Yeah, but she's only 15, which makes her big, right? 17, 16.
No, she was in her 20s.
Oh.
No, she was in her 20s. Charlie started to go for old ladies. Yeah.
My mistake, sorry.
He was, this film, he works himself into a state of, he described it as a neurotic state, because he does not want to be old-fashioned. By 1931, when this film comes out, no one's making silent films anymore, right? Laurel and Hardy started talking in 1929. Everyone is talking, maybe they shouldn't, but they are, and silent film is dead. But Chaplin realizes if the Tramp speaks, he loses his international quality. So he makes this film, and this scene right here, where the Tramp meets the blind flower girl for the first time, Charlie now is able to fund his own films and film at his pace, at his own pace. This scene, he does 200 takes of. And Charlie was the kind of guy that would direct you as to how many steps you take, and on the third step, I want you to stop for a second and then turn 45 degrees and hold it there, and then move your hand like this. Yeah, okay, I got it, Charlie. But Charlie was an artist. And this is what he did with filmmaking, 200 takes. They go on, they film more at his own studio, they film some more takes, and after about 6-8 months later, he comes back and does another 99 takes until he feels he gets it right. Over 300 takes for one scene. Charlie ends up really driving everyone crazy. He wants to dump for Virginia Cherrill, but he has too much time and money involved. The film takes almost 1 year to make. Just absolutely amazing. And the plot of the film is basically the Tramp is trying to earn money for an operation so the blind flower girl can get her sight back. And the Tramp is a very likable character. This is probably I think it's Chaplin's greatest film, in my humble opinion, and it has the greatest ending of any film, sound or silent, that you will ever see, in my humble opinion. Better than Gone with the Wind. This film chokes you up. And I won't tell you about it, because I want you to see it. And it is so powerful. Again, he's mixing comedy with pathos. And the Tramp is by now beloved. And this film makes Charlie a profit of over $3 million. Again, 1931, America's experiencing the great. Why it was great, I don't know. There was nothing great about it. I just know it was a depression, but I guess it was so bad that it was the Great Divide. Anyway, it makes $3 million at almost the depths of the depression. Charlie now wants to go on a little vacation, wants to get away, wants to think about what he's going to do, and his little vacation turns into a 16-month trip around the world. He meets a lot of famous people, a lot of famous thinkers. He comes back to America. He's tired. He's lonely. How's he going to cure his loneliness?
A young lady.
I'm afraid to say.
Paulette Goddard. That'll cure your loneliness, the beautiful Paulette Goddard. Now, she's an old bag. She's 21 years old. Oh, yeah. Charlie, by this time, is in his mid-40s. So he has her by over 20 years. She is a beautiful woman, a very good actress, too, and they become a team. And she will star in Charlie's next film. Now, Charlie made the circus. He made the circus. Gold Rush in 1925. 3 years later, the circus. 3 years later, City Lights. 4 years later, his next film. Anyone want to guess what the next film is? It involves industrialization.
Yeah. Trump.
Modern times.
Yeah.
Modern Times. Yes, very good. Charlie makes the film Modern Times. And from those great thinkers that Charlie had met while he was on his 16-month vacation, Charlie is going to address the Depression. And he and Paulette Goddard are working and trying to make a house out of a shack, and it's a wonderful film, again silent, with some sound effects. There's some slight talking in it from a boss on like a television screen, but the tramp does not talk until the very end of the film. And at the end, while this film is going on, now I first saw this film when I was in high school years ago, and even I was not politically aware at that time, being in high school, of what was going on. When I saw this film in a revival house, the politics of this film knocked me over. Okay, Charlie, I got it. You don't like capitalism. Do you think Americans like that message? No. This starts the downfall of Chaplin's popularity. He comes out against capitalism. He's making statements about it. The film has some scenes that he's mistaken for a communist, and the American public is not happy with the politics. The film makes money, but not as much money as it should. When the Tramp did speak at the end, and this is a marvelous scene, he does so by song. He sings a song that is in French and Italian and gobbledygook words. And that way it made him international. But this is the last film that will depict the Tramp character for Charlie. He now, he finishes his film. He and Paulette go off to China, where they are married. Their marriage will last until 1942. She will star in his next film for him, and I apologize for this next picture. Charlie was traveling around the world watching the world events of the mid and late 1930s. You know what was going on in Europe, right? We got this guy, Hitler was there in Italy, and we got this idiot in Germany.
The way they look a little bit.
Thank you very much. Yes, the way that they look. Comparisons were made about these two guys for years. They were born 4 days apart. Charlie's April 16th. This other moron is born on April 20th, 1889. They both come from poverty. They both achieved world renown for different reasons. And they share the same mustache. That guy on the left ruined that look. No one else can ever wear a... Does anyone know what that mustache was called? It was known as a toothbrush mustache, because it was about as thick as a toothbrush. People don't wear that anymore. Thanks.
Did I look haughty?
Charlie saw what was going on in Europe and said Hitler must be laughed at. He was taken back by the nationalism that was going on. I remember reading about the Marx Brothers sitting there in between scenes of some of their films, like at the circus, listening to Hitler's speeches, and people were just, oh my God, what is happening to the world? Well, Charlie said we have to laugh at this guy. He didn't make the first film to make fun of Hitler. Who did that? Does anyone know?
Three Stooges.
The Three Stooges, yes. But no one paid attention to Three Stooges shorts. Mo Howard made fun of Hitler first. Charlie makes The Great Dictator, works on it 2 years, takes a year to film it. He plays the Great Dictator himself, Adnoid Hinkle. Anyone, you see that sign, the emblem that's on his cap? Does anyone, now it's not obviously a swastika, does anyone know what that was called, what Charlie called it in the film? The double cross. Not nice job, Charlie. Yes, he skewers it, but people did not want. They were afraid to make fun of Hitler because of the box office. If I have time after, ask me about Gone with the Wind. Charlie looks at Hitler's mannerisms, listens to his speeches. He does a great German pig Latin in this film. and he really skewers Hitler. And then he also plays a dual role. He plays the Jewish barber. That looks like Adnoid Hinkle, and that's what the character's called, the Jewish barber. Does anyone recognize that guy in the middle?
Yeah.
From where?
Barrymore.
No, that's not Barrymore. Right the opposite, Satchel. That's Louis Dombrowski of the Bowery Boys. Leo Gorsey's father. Yes. Yes, that's right, Bernard Gorsey. And Charlie plays a Jewish barber. And in it, Charlie is, and the reason why he made the barber Jewish was because the Nazis, when they referred to people, he's a dirty blank. Charlie would always say, I do not have the honor of being associated with that group of people. This is the shaving scene, which if you watch this film, they did it in one take. Very unusual. Chester Conklin is sitting in the chair. This film was nominated for 5 Academy Awards, including Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Actor, Charlie Chaplin. Want to guess why, in my opinion, why Charlie didn't win in 1940?
They were afraid of...
Because if you know what he did at the end of the film, has anyone seen this film?
No.
No,
I've seen it.
See it? The last 5 minutes? Do
I've seen the whole thing with my parents that time.
Okay. Charlie looks into the camera. The Jewish barber takes Adnoid Hinkle's place under mistaken identity. Adnoid Hinkle is hauled off to a prison, and the Jewish barber dresses in his clothes and takes his place and makes a speech. Looks dead right in the camera. And to the world audience on film, Charlie derides capitalism, praises socialism.
Big mistake.
We don't think American audience is going to like that very much, and they don't. That's probably why the film probably did not win any Academy Awards, because he ticked everybody off. It did make money. It was a big money maker for 1940, and one of the biggest money makers for the entire decade. And the world was upside down, and only Charlie Chaplin had the guts to make fun of Adolf Hitler. Well, now he makes this film. His marriage to Paulette Goddard is falling apart. They will divorce in 1942. And Charlie starts, well, what the hell, 0 for 3. Come on, man, give the guy a break. He'll get it right eventually. He is seeing this woman who is an actress, a mediocre actress. Today we call her a stalker. She's in and out of Charlie's life. When he wants her out, finally he has to have her arrested twice. She appears back in his life in 1942 and says, I'm pregnant and the baby is yours. Well, that doesn't sit well with audiences of the 1940s, would it? Well, Charlie went and had blood tests done. They were inadmissible in 1942. That showed the baby was not his. Charlie ends up winning the case, but it damages his reputation severely. Right after that trial is done, Charlie is charged with the Mann Act by Jedgar Hoover and the FBI. Does anyone know what the Mann Act is? I don't want to ask why you know that, sir. But you're absolutely true. Transporting women across state lines for amoral purposes. Yes, it's still on the books, still. And they brought 4 charges. 3 didn't get as far as a trial, but the Mann Act trial did, and that trial went on for 2 weeks. That right there on that table there with the red headline, that's an actual, on that first table, that's an actual World War II newspaper telling about how we are kicking the Germans' butts and everything else. And in the lower right-hand corner of that paper is Charlie Chaplin's Mann Act trial. He was still that famous that he was sharing World War II front page news. Well, he was found innocent of that, but his reputation took a tremendous beating. Now, he dumped Joan Barry. Paulette Goddard is divorcing him in 1942. The marriage was basically done by 1940. And what's it time for Charlie to do again? Get married! Yes, very good. Okay, number 4. Has anyone heard of Eugene O'Neill?
Yes,
That's his daughter.
Well, that lasted though.
Yes, it did last. And you know why it lasted? Because she was a woman of refinement and of age. How old is she?
25.
18.
No.
Nice guess, but 18 years old, yes. But this is the marriage, as this young lady said here, that lasts. They are, when Charles Jr., Charlie Chaplin's son, said that Una was madly in love with Charlie. She worshipped him. Charlie is, he said the day that I saw her, my happiness was complete. They were married until Charlie died in 1977. Over a period of, well, that's the next slide. They go everywhere together and do everything. Una's father was not crazy about this. She's 18, Charlie is 54.
Wow.
Oops. But he always had an eye for young ladies. But this is the one that lasts. Over a period of 18 years, Charlie has 8 children. He did not watch television, Charlie. He did not watch television at night. He fathered children. And very, very happy marriage. Comes 1947, Charlie's going to make his next film. He has not made a film in 7 years. Anyone know what the film is? It's a black comedy. French name, Monsieur Berdo. And this film is a black comedy, and in it, Charlie plays a banker that is broke, so he marries women and kills them for his money. Wow, that is a lot of comedy potential there. That sounds like a laugh riot to me. Well, in this film, what does Charlie do again? It's about capitalism. We have wars that munitions companies make money and we kill individuals. This is 1947. People don't want to hear this stuff.
No.
With the Red Scare going on. The funniest scene in this entire film is with Martha Ray when he tries to kill Martha Ray. And that was a comedian that could hold her own with Charlie. From the late 40s to the 50s, Charlie is deemed dangerously amoral and progressive. Charlie calls himself a peacemonger. He speaks out against the House Un-American Activities Committee. He speaks out against the McCarthy hearings. And if you do some reading, there were communists in Hollywood. There were communists in the United States government. They got in during the Roosevelt administration. Not blaming FDR, but that's when they came in. But the outrage that was going on with the trials, and Charlie comes out and speaks up for the communists. He calls himself a peacemonger. That doesn't sit well with the American public. He meets with Soviet officials and diplomats. People remember during the war he was advocating constantly for a second front to relieve the Russians. His popularity sinks. Monsieur Berdo is a critical and commercial failure. It was booed at the premiere, and there were calls for a boycott. People did not like Charlie's un-American stand. The next film he makes is 1952, Limelight, with young Claire Bloom. And this he kept telling her, he keeps describing the film as melancholy. And melancholy it is. It brings his poor childhood back. He's an actor on the stage that's having a very difficult time. It's not a particularly funny film. It is a downer, except when you get to this scene that was done, filmed in the last 3 weeks of 1951 with Mr. Buster Keaton. The only time they would perform together on film in a comedy routine, and it is marvelous. This is the highlight of the film. Keaton is amazing. Well, they end up, Charlie goes to New York because he's going to premiere the film in England. When he is on the ship, let's just see if I can read this for you, because this is quite a quote from Mr. Chaplin. They leave to go to England, where the film is going to premiere in London, and his re-entry visa is revoked by the United States Attorney General. And in it, Charlie said that he didn't care. Whether I re-entered that unhappy country or not was a little consequence to me. I would like to have told them the sooner I was out of that hate-beleaguered atmosphere, the better. That I was fed up with America's insults and moral pomposity. That does amazing things
The
for
most
us.
immoral guy with all these women and everything.
Well, that's what you do. You point the finger first, right? Well, that he bans American critics from the premiere. The film does not make money. Charlie decides to settle in Switzerland in a little cottage on 35 acres. See, I can be sarcastic too. He sends Una back to the United States to sell his studio, since he's not allowed back in, and to sell his home in Beverly Hills. He now, even though he's residing in Switzerland, he goes to England to make his first European film. Well, The King of New York, he derides everything in this movie, from widescreen films to plastic surgery to American politics. Again, Charlie, would you keep the politics out of your films? But he can't do it. He cannot make films like he did on his own. He can't shoot one scene 300 times. He's making a film in England, and there are union rules, and there are work rules, and there are schedules. The film looks kind of cheap. Charlie refused to release the film in America until 1973. So it was it made a small profit in Europe, but not what it could have done. After this film, Charlie writes his autobiography, which is on the table. As you can tell, it's required reading for the whole family. Even the youngest son there is reading a German version of it. That's a smart kid. Charlie makes one more film in 1967. You might have heard of this. It comes from Hong Kong. Marlon Brando is in it. It's in color. He fights with Chaplin all the time. Brando is a method actor that does not get along with Charlie's style of directing. Sophia Loren is fine in it. This film, Charlie has one scene in it as a seasick steward. There's kind of a cameo shot in it. And this film loses money, critical failure. Last film Chaplin will ever make. 5 years later, Hollywood beckons again. The Motion Picture Academy of Arts and Sciences asked Charlie to come back and give a special Academy Award in 1972. Charlie doesn't want to go, but he talks to Una. He finally decides to go. A lot of press coverage. I remember it as a kid. I was still in high school, and this got a lot of press coverage. When Charlie went into the Academy Awards, look at that lower left-hand picture.
Jack Lemmon.
That's Jack Lemmon presenting him with the honorary Oscar. They gave him a derby and a bamboo cane, which Charlie didn't do anything with except hold. You see that lower left-hand picture? Mm-hmm. The audience gave him a 12-minute standing ovation. Wow. A record not to be broken in Oscar history. Charlie was very happy. He made a gracious little thank you speech. He hung around for a couple of days and then scoots back to Switzerland. Not exactly fond of the United States, where he made all his money. Late 60s and into the 70s, Charlie begins to have a series of strokes. He has a film project that he is thinking about doing called The Freak, starring his daughter Victoria, that would be about a girl born in South America with wings instead of arms. A lot of comic possibilities there. But because of his health, it doesn't get off the ground. His health is failing. He does reissue and rescore A Woman of Paris, there, that film on the left. He also publishes that book, My Life in Pictures, and if you can read what's on the bottom, I will read it for you. The illustrated story of a comic genius.
Very modest.
Don't hurt your arm, pat yourself in the back, Charlie. Charlie now, after those projects, he suffers additional strokes. He gets weaker and weaker, has trouble communicating. Eventually, by October of 1977, he's confined to a wheelchair. He passes away on Christmas Day, 1977, at the age of 88. He is buried in a cemetery right near his home there in Switzerland. And just a couple months later, on March the 1st, see that lower right-hand picture? An out-of-work Polish and an out-of-work Bulgarian immigrant to Switzerland dug up the body and held it for ransom. They want $600,000. Una laughs him off, says Charlie never would have paid that. Well, this made worldwide news. They do find the body buried a few miles away in the field. The Bulgarian guy just kind of drove it. He got off lightly. The Polish guy was served almost 5 years of hard labor for doing it not so smart. Anyway, Charlie's body is returned, and it is buried under reinforced concrete. Like Abe Lincoln, you're never digging him up. Una, when she passes away almost 20 years later, she is buried beside him. What Charlie said about his character was this. The whole point of the little fellow is no matter how down on his ass he is, no matter how well the jackals succeed in tearing him apart, he's still a man of dignity. And that he is. If you look at the Tramp in his S&A films and his mutual films, he acts like a man that had some dignity and maybe a higher position, and now he's relegated to the status of a tramp. We never know where the Tramp originated from the character, but that's how Charlie played him. He made amazing films. He really did. This character is known 100 years later, and I think will be known even 100 years from now. I personally do not approve of his personal life or of his politics, but I can't argue with his comedy. As I said, I love Keaton, crazy about Keaton. I love Harold Lloyd, but this guy was an artist. He wrote his own music, wrote, directed, acted. Has anyone ever heard the song Smile? Smile, your heart is breaking.
Yeah.
Charlie wrote that song. Yes. When you listen, when you watch the films from Modern Times and City Lights, the soundtracks are amazing. Charlie, so the guy was truly an artist, no matter how you felt about him, and he was really maybe one of the world's greatest entertainer ever. Well, now, this is the slide that you've been waiting for, because I'm done yapping. Does anyone have any questions?
Years ago, the building is still there, it's condos right now, the Viaduct building. And
Yes.
there's silent movies.
Yes.
Charles Chaplin under here.
Thank you so much, yes. To tie in Charlie to Bayshore. I heard from old timers that of course, that building was used. Max Sennett, did shoot films in West Sayville and here in Bayshore. But by the time Charlie joined, Mac had moved out to California by 1913. Charlie joined him at the end of 1913. So Charlie Chaplin never made any films in Bayshore. He did come to Bayshore. There's a little building here on Main Street, a little closer to Iceland. Well, it was called Southside Hospital. I forget what all the name changes now. And when they were raising funds to build that, I believe it was a doctor, asked Charlie to come out and help raise funds. Charlie, I can't be bothered. I'll come out. I'll be in the area, so I'll come out. But I really don't want to perform anything. The doctor's pretty smart. He gets Charlie in a car, and they take him out to where it was sticks out here then in Bayshore, right? In the 1927. Sunrise Highway wasn't even finished. And what happens? The doctor put up billboards that said, this star is going to help us, and this star is appearing.
Oh.
And then he drops the leaflets down, or actually he didn't drop the leaflets yet. Charlie sees those billboards and said, I'm the biggest star in the world. You're going to have that. You didn't want, but well, now I'll help you raise money.
Oh.
They used Charlie's small little ego there. And Charlie actually was the judge of the beauty contest. Not a really good judge. The women are up there. He's examining their feet like they're horses. He's looking at their teeth. But Charlie did participate. And the doctor, once he knew Charlie was going to participate, then he dropped leaflets that said Charlie Chaplin was going to be there. So Charlie does have a tie into Bayshore, but not with films. Yes? You
Did
got a
you see
question?
the Broadway musical Chaplin?
I did not see it. I did see the movie with.
It didn't last very long.
No, it didn't.
It was very good.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Rob McClure played it.
Oh, it
It
did.
starts with him on a tightrope.
All right. Yeah, I see you're from the circus.
Yeah.
And if you get a chance to watch the movie Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr.,
Yes.
pretty good film.
It's a very good documentary.
Yes, yeah. The best documentary about Charlie's filmmaking is Unknown Chaplin, which appears on PBS from time to time. I have a copy of it back there. There's The Little Tramp, is a documentary about his later life. I just purchased another one on eBay. He is a very interesting guy. A quick story, you know Benny Hill?
Sure.
Well,
Benny Hill, yeah.
I love Benny Hill. Not for the Hills Angels, but I love Benny Hill. And Benny Hill was allowed into Chaplin's study, which is kept the same as it was. It's like a museum. The day Charlie died, it is left untouched. Benny Hill was allowed into Chaplin's study. And as he was allowed to sit in Chaplin's chair, and as he turned, he saw on the shelf VHSs, well, the European equivalent of VHSs of Benny Hill
Wow.
on the shelf. And Benny Hill cried.
Oh.
He said, wow, Chaplin liked to watch me. Yes?
He had children at such an advanced age. Are any of his children still active in theater or
Yes,
movies? Or?
yes, quite a few of them became actors. Of course, no, they couldn't match Charlie.
No, but I mean,
But yes, on stage and in film, Geraldine is probably the most famous.
Yeah.
I believe she was a model. I don't know that much about it yet, but I believe, like Warren McCall, she started at modeling and then became an actress. And of course, all the Chaplin kids get all the residuals and whatnot. When Charlie died, I believe his estate was worth over $26 million
wow.
in 1977. So, pretty good. Yes.
How
Yeah.
tall was Charlie?
Charlie was under 6 foot. I think he was about 5'9" or so, 5'10" maybe at most. And if you watch Chaplin on film, and Chaplin always wanted himself, when he filmed, to get a total shot. Charlie wanted his feet in the shot. That's why his camera many times, and I'm not a technical guy to talk about this stuff, but he always wanted to have a full shot. Look at Charlie's shoes the next time you get a chance. Like Stan Laurel, they have no sole. They have no heel. They're just to give him a flat-footed walk.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes, anything else?
Did he wear his shoes on backwards to make himself walk that way?
No, but they were oversized, and he did kind of that waddle
Oh,
walk.
okay.
Yes, that he developed. That they knew at Keystone that here's a guy that's really developing a unique character, which is why they never put Charlie in any Keystone chases, because he would have gotten lost. You you couldn't tell one Keystone cop from the other.
They wouldn't focus
But
on him.
Chaplin didn't need that. He developed a very unique character almost from the start. So yes, their shoes were just oversized slap shoes, kind of like Buster's shoes. And Stan Laurel also was slightly not as big as Chaplin, but also with no heel on them.
Those shoes in the picture up there look as if they're very thicker on the ends. And
It's almost like a work shoe. Yeah, well, that's just a picture that they used for
Oh, I thought maybe they were.
No,
Fair
no, that's just like artwork.
Oh.
For, it's the only one that I could find that had a Chaplin film with the end on it, so that, yeah, in the back first, yes.
I noticed like the wife he had before Bullock Garden, he had 2 sons with, she looked like Una O'Neill when I saw her.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Yeah, Charlie was always enamored with young women, obviously, yes. Yeah, well, he didn't date ugly women, that's for sure. Does anyone know Thelma Todd from the Hal Roach shorts? And a beautiful hot toddy. She's in Marx Brothers movies, on Horse Feathers and stuff. So, supposedly Charlie also had a fling with her. Probably Charlie would have had a fling with everyone here, if he could have. Yes.
You said 2000.
Yes, sir.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I seen The Great Dictator with my parents. It was at the Bayshore Cinema. It was probably 1970, 1971,
Right.
I would say. I think I was still in high school at the time.
Right. Yes, yes, with the reissues. Yes, now they're available on DVD. If you can, Hitler supposedly saw that movie twice. Yes, he watched the film twice by himself. He was a big fan of Hollywood. I'm not going to give him any credit, but he did admire Hollywood films, particularly westerns. But he watched, Chaplin was told he watched The Great Dictator twice alone. Usually he had his entourage watching films. He did, Charlie said, I would have given the world to have found out what he thought about that.
Larry, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, folks, thank you. Yes.